This program for artists specifically has real resonance because the idea that folks are coming here and are sacrificing their time waiting in line in order to attend these outdoor performances for free is really meaningful. The artists, when they're on stage, they can feel the energy from those crowds. It's very different than when someone's paid $200, $300, $800 to go and see Othello on Broadway, for instance. That transaction, your audience is just waiting for you to prove to them that they deserve the money. That doesn't happen here at Shakespeare in the Park. There's just this energy that everybody's in it together.
He hath bore me on his back 1,000 times, and now, how abhorred in my imagination it is, my gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed I know not how oft. Where be your jibes now?
The Public Theater was founded in the mid-50s by Joe Papp. He began his theater career by taking touring productions of Shakespeare all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. And it was his supposition that exposing people to Shakespeare in their own neighborhoods would actually be a very powerful way to help them understand that the culture was theirs. So this venue was constructed between 1961 and we opened it in 1962 with George C. Scott in The Merchant of Venice playing Shylock. Often people wonder whether or not Shakespeare in the Park is for them, generally because they think Shakespeare is, some vaunted writer who they're not going to be able to understand. They won't be able to understand the poetry. They won't be able to understand the story. The reality is Shakespeare was writing for a broad constituency. He was writing for the plebeians on the ground and the lords and ladies in the balconies over the stage. So his writing already took that under consideration. And the beauty of Shakespeare, one of our directors recently said Shakespeare is like tofu, that you can mix things with it and it sort of absorbs the flavor. And so the vernacular of the Shakespeare that we create is a very American Shakespeare. And it speaks in its own very American vernacular. No one's on stage trying to speak with an English accent and to sound as if they were spouting sonnets while they're taking a shower. Everybody is here very much in the moment and in the now. And the performances that we do, because the artists who we're working with live in this world just like we do, are responding to what's around them. And the beauty of Shakespeare is it can actually absorb all of that. The stories are such human stories and they're such universal stories. And it's very easy for almost anyone to come and understand the story, to sort of feel like they're following it. Even if you don't catch every single word, the story is there and the just incredible artistry is. There have been an incredible number of performers who got their start here at the Delacorte. Joe was really a path breaker. He was a person who was way out ahead of the theater scene here in the city. I think most famously, Meryl Streep started here while she was still a student at Yale studying drama. As I said, George C. Scott, James Earl Jones, Anne Hathaway, just an incredible set of luminary artists. So when you come out to Central Park to see a show, it begins earlier in the day. You actually have to line up in Central Park. We have a line that winds down one of the paths that's near the Delacorte, and you wait. And if you're anticipating that it's going to be a very popular show, you might get here pretty early in the morning.
Folks are showing up at 6 a.m. when the park opens. They're bringing their picnic blanket, and they're often meeting people that they've never met before. And we have literally heard from folks who are like, I made this friend, and now every year we try to go on the same day and wait for tickets.
Coming into the theater, you have 1,800 people seated around you. All of them, just like you, have sacrificed their time and their effort to come and see the program. And it always begins a little bit before the sun goes down. And then as you're sitting and watching the show, the sun very gently lowers. Often the moon comes up and you are just lost in this world, surrounded by Central Park. Belvedere Castle is in the background behind the stage, and it's just the most romantic experience ever.
Obviously, when you come to see a show here, the beautiful thing about theater is that it tells you where to look, and it says, look on stage and look at this beautiful set and these wonderful actors and everything that we've created for you. And it doesn't say, look backstage or look all around you at the things that are kind of like held together with, Scotch tape.
Since the theater was built in the 60s, about every 15 or 20 years it needed some sort of architectural intervention. But to date, they haven't really been significant. Most of those interventions did things like replace the seats, replace the decking, replace the cedar facade, because of course it's exposed 365 days of the year to the elements in the park, to the sun, etc. In the early 60s, Robert Moses, who was at the time the Parks Commissioner, the all-powerful Robert Moses, decided that Joe Papp should actually charge for tickets. And Joe said, no sir, this program is called Free Shakespeare in the Park. That actually betrays the very essence of what I have been doing for the last 8 years. So Joe actually finally won in court. The judge said that Moses was being arbitrary and capricious, and he agreed that Joe could continue to not charge for Shakespeare in the Park. We really wanted to ensure that this theater, which in 1962 was in some ways almost built like a pop-up venue. We really wonder if Moses thought that this theater was going to last for a long time, or if Joe Papp and his whole free, silly Shakespeare in the Park enterprise would just dry up and blow away. Of course, 60 years later, we were with a venue that still had at its bones a sort of very temporary feel. So we needed to make sure that we were keeping this theater as stable as possible from a physical standpoint for as long as possible. So that was really a big focus of our renovation.
We operate the Delacorte Theater through a license agreement with the New York City Parks Department, and we were paying for all the maintenance and upkeep, and Patrick was interested in understanding what the relationship was between the city and the building that they own and their responsibilities to it and our responsibilities to it.
The renovation had a number of challenges, not the least of which we're sitting in the middle of Central Park. Central Park is one of the most beloved, but also one of the most highly regulated areas in Manhattan. So we had all sorts of approvals that we needed to work through.
There was studies done, various types of studies done for the Delacorte. What was ultimately decided was the approach that you now see, which was one that really nestled into the park, respected the footprint of the original Delacorte, and was re-envisioned, but ultimately didn't take up any more space or volume within the scenic landmark of Central Park.
The project is about $85 million all in. So we worked to apply for funding from the administration, city council, and borough president over the course of 3 or 4 years to accumulate about 50% of the costs and then raised the rest privately.
So in reshaping the theater, we gave it a different form. We kept the existing structure here, which is why we call it a renovation. But everything else was completely stripped and taken away. I like to say that the shape suggests that the theater actually rises out of its site and its landscape here in Central Park so that it belongs here amongst the trees. But that form did a couple things for us. Aesthetically gave a more dynamic presence, that tilt. The texture really gives it a stronger sense of scale and movement. But it also gave us more space in the grandstand to hold another row of seats. That extra space allowed us to make wider, generally wider seats within the theater, a cross aisle that never existed, with ADA spots at some of the best locations in the theater. I think we've got 34 ADA accessible spots now, more than double what was there before, and they are, I would say, the best seats in the house.
Previously, you could only enter from one of the entrances if you're a person who had a mobility disability, and you could only sit in the front row, which sounds great in theory, but as we all know, are actually not always the best seats. So the design really intentionally pushed on finding ways to make more of the theater accessible in different locations and to create more accessible seats overall.
This as a permanent structure has a lot of infrastructure within it that the old theater didn't have. Life safety systems, sprinkler systems, alarm systems, the electrical systems built in so that they're not running cables to extension cords and waters coming down. All these things are built in.
Yeah, the facade is one of my favorite parts of this renovation. Prior to this, there's a little bit of the derelict baseball stadium feel. Didn't really feel as elevated, particularly when you think about what happens inside the theater. You're in that space and you're seeing some of the greatest artists of our time doing Shakespeare, some of the most amazing performances, gorgeous production values. But outside never matched the inside. And one of the things that we wanted to do was really elevate the outside experience, to say to the people of the city whose theater this is, great stuff is happening inside, please come. And to give them sort of a bit of the dignity and respect that we want them to feel once they're sitting inside the theater.
The idea is that the theater really has a dynamic presence on the exterior, working with the treescape, the textured facade, the bark of the trees, light and shadow. But at the same time, once you enter the theater and sit in your seat, the theater disappears. And the show, the setting of being out here in Central Park are what takes front stage.
So the facade has actually been created by utilizing Redwood, which has been reclaimed from water towers all around New York City. So one of our team says this is the most romantic idea she can think of, that this redwood, which has been pulled off of the roofs of buildings that held life-sustaining water throughout all 5 boroughs, is now across the whole facade of our venue. I'm really excited about this renovation. It is a true signal, especially in this moment in our country and in the world, that the culture is everyone's. There are no walls separating anyone from it. This space is all about inclusion. It's all about welcoming people back. And I'm really excited for the signal that this space is going to send to the entire city, that both the culture belongs to them, but also that we respect all the folks who want to participate in our program, who want to be an audience member, who want to be an actor, who want to be a director or a stagehand. The space is far more welcoming for absolutely everyone, and that was so, so important.
What remained always a priority, and that was with us as well as with the public, of course, was to preserve the most important aspect of the experience of the Delacorte, which was and is and continues to be the open air experience of the theater within Central Park. And that is an iconic experience that really had to be retained.
We started doing distributions of tickets in different locations in the 5 boroughs. So every day there's a distribution of tickets in a different location outside of Central Park, with the goal being that if you're a person who lives in Staten Island and wants to come, but the thought of coming all the way, waiting in line, going home and taking a shower, coming back, seeing a 3-hour-long play, and then going home again just feels like too limiting, that we're providing that way that folks can get tickets. We also do distributions at our headquarters downtown on Astor Place. So we really try to provide a lot of different opportunities for folks to be able to get in.
We're opening the theater with Twelfth Night. And Twelfth Night is being directed by Sahim Ali, who is our associate artistic director and also one of our resident directors. And he is the most joyful director. His productions just exude happiness. Starring in this season show are Lupita Nyong'o, her little brother Junior, who has just gotten out of acting school, Sandra Oh, Daphne Rubin Vega, Peter Dinklage, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, a really, really fabulous crew of actors, and the show is just going to be glorious.